In this episode, we're gonna retrofit my headlights with some HIDs and some demon eyes. So I started out by going to Toyota Parts Deal and buying some brand new headlights for this car because I wanted to start with something fresh. I could try to restore the other ones I had, but they were just too far gone to get back. And the new headlights for these actually aren't that expensive, so I just wound up buying a new pair. So I'm gonna do a quick breakdown of what we have here. There's a lot of peripheral stuff, but this is gonna be the main thing. So I went to the Retrofit source and bought their Morimoto D2S. This is the 5.0 by Xenon series. So it comes with the projector and the electronic shutter for the by Xenon part. Here's the bulb holder ring. This ring secures it to the vehicle's headlight. This is the wiring for the shutter for the high beams. And then here's a plug that you could use optional. I'm gonna hardwire mine, so I don't think I'll be using that. Here's the washer that goes between the reflector housing and the back side of the projector lens assembly. And then I got a D2S bulb. These are gonna be on 55 watt ballasts. The other part is the demon eyes. It's just an RGB array. We're gonna stick to the top of the projector assembly like that. This is gonna be the shroud that goes over that whole assembly. So to start, we need to separate the front polycarbonate from the rest of the light. This is gonna be for my MR2. This can be applied to any vehicle basically for this process. There's gonna be some kind of tab that holds it. In my case, I have one screw and a bunch of plastic tabs that'll bend off later. So we just need to remove the screw from the back. I'm also gonna remove the tab that held the original bulb assembly in. And these can pretty much go in the trash at this point, unless you plan on reverting back to the halogen light. So the next step, we have to break the seal loose. For a brand new polycarbonate headlight with ABS back housing, I found that running the oven at 210 degrees Fahrenheit for approximately 10 minutes is enough to break the seal loose. The glass transition temperature of ABS is about 220 degrees Fahrenheit, so you don't want to go above that with your oven. So if you stay below that, you should be safe. But if you go too long, you could still melt the plastic because there's always going to be localized heat in the oven. Take one of the grates out. Set the timer for 10 minutes. Just watch it for any warpage or anything like that while it's in there. Obviously, it shouldn't do it at this temperature, but if left long enough, it could. Also make sure none of the edges of the light are touching the oven metal parts. All right, so it's been 10 minutes. Shut the oven off. Your first indication should be, this should feel really tacky. You can almost like move it around. So this is pretty hot, so be careful when touching it. Try to find a spot near the corner to get the flathead screwdriver in. So once you get it broke enough loose, you should be able to grab the corner and just pull. Voila, separated. There's a couple things I want to get out. I'm using an orange LED for my turn signals. I also want to get rid of this big orange circle. I'm just going to put a screwdriver in the back of this and just pop it out by slapping it. The goal right now is to get these two reflector housings out and paint them black. Bottom reflector housing is just held in by one Phillips screw. There's that one. This reflector is a little more tricky. We've got this tab right here, this little ring right here that's got to come off. With the reflector housing, we need to remove this piece right here that the bulb sits behind. Wiggle it out, it'll eventually just bend it. So now we're left with the holes. This is gonna be the main hole that our retrofit is gonna go through. This bottom hole used to be for the high beams, but we're gonna use that to run the wires for the retrofit HID through, and the demon eyes. I'm going to crack a window. Any matte black paint will do. I just don't want any reflections coming out of this housing. All right, while we wait on that to dry, I'm gonna turn my attention to this. I've seen some tutorials online. The majority of the ones I've seen, they just drilled a hole through the housing right here. So it'll be just a little bit to the left of the M for Morimoto. So it'll go between that and the S. All right, positioning the light right where it needs to be. Pass the bolt through there. LED array on top. Just tighten it down, not too tight. You don't want to break the circuit board. Just a dab of super glue to cover the bolt. Despite the window being open, I'm catching some fumes, so I'm gonna get out of here and let this room ventilate. Drop this not so reflector housing back in. This one just drops back in here, and then put the screw back in the back side. Next step, go ahead and get the shroud, and it just clicks on to little tabs on the lens. Now it's time to plug in the cable for the shutter. Go ahead and feed these wires through before putting this in. This is where we make sure we have our rubber washer. We're gonna drop this ring on, start threading this ring. They sell a tool to tighten this ring down as well. For my housing in particular, I have a hard time getting this ring to seat fully inside of the housing. And what that does as a result, you'll see later, the main problem I have is in the end, the ballast itself, the plug that goes onto the bulb, doesn't fully secure in. So being careful not to touch the glass of the bulb. So I don't know if you can see with this lighting, but with this fully secured, it's running into this blue nut that isn't able to fully go in because of the thickness of the reflector housing holding it. So I just took a piece of wire, stripped it out, and this is just the casing for it. I'm basically gonna make a shim to go around this bulb assembly, and then when I put this back on, it'll hold it tighter. All right, I'm happy with how clean that is. I'm gonna use the rest of this time to put the lens back on. I'm gonna bake it in the oven again and press it together. I'll see you back when that's done. All right, so I've gone ahead and tested the lights. Everything works on them. As of right now, we've put some knifeless tape on. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap some eyelids onto these. Then I'm gonna go ahead and install them onto the car. All right, off camera, I pulled the other wiring harness apart, pulled the old headlights out, and then I took the wiring harness apart from that. So if you've been following along on this build, you will know that the entire wiring harness of this car is from an Audi TT. So that includes the headlight harness. I wound up retrofitting the insides of the TT headlight into the MR2 assembly. So pretty much everything is stock TT wiring. So with that, this is a CAN bus car. So it's gonna look for a signal from both sides, or else it's gonna trip the computer to think that a bulb is out, and it's gonna keep telling me that. So I need to bridge both sides. I went through and found out which are which. This is gonna be for the high beam circuit, and the yellow and brown in this harness is going to be for the low beam circuit. The other wires can go away. I already separated the turn signal harness before to put the LED turn signals in. So I'll just reuse that part. My goal is to simplify this, get rid of all the other wires that were part of the plugs, and then just have the 4 on each side. If you buy the kit from the Retrofit source I think other people make the same kind of kit too, but this is from the Retrofit source in particular. It comes with the relays, so 1 for each side. And on the other side, it has OEM input. So typically you'd have like a 9006 bulb or one of those stock bulb types, and you would just plug your stock harness of one side of the car into it, and it would power both sides of the HID harness. So I'm gonna bridge the 2 low beam connections into this one, and 2 ballast outputs come out of this setup right here. So 1 input, 2 outputs. Other than that, it's a really simple harness. The other half of the deal is the high beam harness. Instead of powering light bulbs, it's gonna power the shutter. So the wiring for the demon eyes is really simple. It came with this little harness adapter to basically split 1 fuse into 2, and it runs another circuit out to this wire here. But for right now, I have it bridged straight to the battery just for testing purpose in the car and make sure everything looks good and it works. All that's in its circuit is a Bluetooth adapter that connects to older Android phones, and I think any iPhone at this point. I had trouble getting it to connect to my Galaxy S22. That's one thing they don't mention when you buy it, is the app is outdated, and there's no other app that I know of that can run it. So if you buy the Morimoto Bluetooth RGB controller, just keep that in mind. You might have to use an old Android phone or tablet to get it to work right. I'm only gonna use 2 outputs for my demon eyes for right now. They're plug and play from the array that we installed on the projector lens itself. The only other thing to add in later is you bridge this wire here into the positive connection on your low beams. So when you turn your headlights on, it'll turn the demon eyes off. I still have to mount the headlights back in as well. So for right now, I'm just gonna look at how the demon eyes work and see how they look on the car. And then I'll do the wiring and installation later on. All right, here's a sneak peek of how the demon eyes look. Nothing's fully installed yet, so the headlights are a little bit crooked and the bumper's kind of popped out, but whatever, you get the idea. Here is my old tablet. It's got the Morimoto Bluetooth app on it. Since most of the accents on this car are green, I'm probably gonna apply green lights to the car for most of its time. I think the red looks pretty cool too, but of course it does pretty much everything that an RGB controller would do. It does all the rainbow stuff, so if anybody wants to see how bright the orange LED turn signal is, this is without the lens on the top and also without the reflector housing. I painted that black as well, as you saw in the video. It's plenty bright for anything I'll use on the road, so, and it looks good without the orange in there, so I like it. So as always, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and drop it a like. If you want to see more of this car, go ahead and check out the channel and consider subscribing to it. You'll see some of this car and a little sneak peek back there of our other build. More to come on that later. Thank you for watching. Peace out.